Well, good morning. If I am coughing, it's not COVID. It's not COVID. It's a normal cold. It still exists, the normal cold. Well, welcome. Welcome to all of you. I see some of you that I know personally, others I still don't know. But in any case, very happy to be here and to be able to discuss in person. Nothing substitutes the real interaction, the personal interactions. And I think that it's important that we see each other and we discuss how do we work. You will have an entire week, and you will be hearing from many people, our presidents, commission, and council, commissioners, think tankers, journalists, and you will discuss about how the European Union should position in this competitive and fractured world. I am the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign and Security Policy. I am in charge of building a common foreign and security policy and external action service, and in particular, you are supposed to support me on doing that. And on doing that, we have to deal with the new frontiers of diplomacy, which is the title of this meeting. And the new frontiers of diplomacy is a big range of issues. You will talk about how to revitalize multilateralism at this time of power politics. You will talk about the European security in light of the war in Ukraine, but not only. There are other security crises which are looming. We will talk about energy and climate crisis and what the European Union should do. Both things go together. We are facing one of the biggest energy crises since the first oil shock on the 70s. At that time, I was a student at the French Petroleum Institute in Paris. It was in the 72, and I was told that there was only oil for 20 years. Well, we are in 2022, and we still have a lot of oil, but at a very high price. So energy and climate, both things together, is going to be a big challenge. We'll talk about disinformation, foreign interference in our political processes, digital revolution, the global gateway, gender and diversity. It's a very nice program. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm not going to follow all these different issues. It would be impossible, and I am not a specialist on almost any of them. I want to structure my address today about two things. First, the what questions, and second, the how question. The what questions: what is happening? What's coming? What should we do? And the how question: how do we operate? How do we work? How do you work? How we can get more and better results? This is not a moment in which we are going to send flowers to all of you saying that you are beautiful, you work very well, and we are very happy, we are a big family, blah, blah, blah. That's also a moment to talk among us on what do we do well enough. Why I am not always happy with the way my delegations work. And to send clear messages about how I would like you to improve. First, about the what. The world we are facing. As I said, I am not a specialist on almost any of the issues, but I have a broad political understanding. How are we facing a world? What world is it is? Well, it's a world of radical uncertainty. The speed and the scope of change is exceptional. We should not try to deny it. We should not try to resist it. It would be a futile effort. We have to accept it and to adapt it, prioritizing flexibility and resilience. But uncertainty is the rule. And events that one could imagine that will never happen, they are happening one after the other. At this page, the black swan will be the majority. It will not be white swans. All of them will be black. Because one after the other, it happens things that they had a very low probability of happening, nevertheless they happen, and they had a strong impact, and certainly they have. Let me try to summarize what's happening to us. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to discuss with you about it. I think that the Europeans were facing a situation in which we've suffered the consequences of a process that has been lasting for years, in which we have decoupled the sources of our prosperity from the sources of our security. This is a sentence to provide a headline. And I'm taking that from Oliver Schmidt, who has been developing this thesis, I think, quite well. Our prosperity has been based on cheap energy coming from Russia, Russian gas, cheap and suppose affordable and secure and stable, which has been proved not the case, and the access to the big China market for exports and imports, for technological transfer, for investment, and for having cheap goods. I think that the Chinese workers, with their low salaries, has done much better and much more to contain inflation than all the central banks together. So our prosperity was based on China and Russia, energy and market. And clearly today we have to find new ways for energy from inside the European Union as much as we can, because we should not change one dependency by another. The best energy is the one that you produce at home. And this will produce a strong restructuring of our economy. That's for sure. People are not aware of that, but the fact that Russia and China are no longer the ones that were for our economic development will require a strong restructuring of our economy. The access to China is becoming more and more difficult. The adjustment will be tough. And this will create political problems. On the other hand, we delegated our security to the US. And while the cooperation with the Biden administration is excellent, the transatlantic relationship has never been as good as it is today, and our cooperation with the US and my friend Tony Blinken, and we are in a fantastic relationship and cooperating a lot. Who knows what will happen 2 years from now, or even November? What would have happened if instead of Biden, it would be Trump or someone like him in the White House? Which would have been the answer of the US to the war in Ukraine? And which would have been our answer in a different situation? These are some questions that we have to ask to ourselves. And the answer about this question for me is clear. We need to shoulder more responsibilities ourselves. We have to take a bigger part of our responsibility on securing security. You, US, takes care of our security. You, China, and Russia provide the basis of our prosperity. This is a world that is no longer there. And inside our countries, there is a radical shift, and the radical right is increasing in our democracies. Democratically, it's the choice of the people. It's not an imposition from any power. It's people who go and vote here and there. I'm not going to blame anyone, but you have in mind what I'm talking about. The radical right is increasing their grasp in European politics. So we have a difficult cocktail, internal and external, and the old recipes don't work anymore. We have mounting security challenges, and our internal cohesion is under threat. So let's look at the past few months in a little bit more of detail. Something has happened in the past that we knew they could happen, but some of them has been a surprise. First, how not, Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has persisted. We didn't foresee how effectively Ukraine would resist. Well, first, we didn't believe that the war was coming. I have to recognize that here in Brussels, the Americans were saying us, they will attack, and we were quite reluctant to believe it. And I remember very well when Tony Blinken phoned me and told me, well, it's going to happen this weekend. And certainly, 2 days later, 5 o'clock in the morning, they start bombing Kyiv. We didn't believe that, but this was going to happen. And we didn't foresee that Ukraine was ready to resist as fiercely and as successfully as they are doing. Certainly, thanks to our military support. Without it, it would have been impossible. But they put something from their part. And we haven't foreseen neither the capacity of Putin to escalate the level of mass mobilization and an open nuclear threat. And I suppose that all of you have been reading and rereading the last speech of Putin when he declared the annexation. That's a must. Every European citizen must read this speech, and you in particular. And you have to explain to the world what does it mean. What does it mean, this approach against the West, and which are the real reasons of this war. Second, the deep US-China competition. That was not a surprise. But the escalation of tension in Taiwan, yes, they were not in the agenda. And they were triggered by an individual trouble of a personality that bring the Taiwan Strait at the bridge, at the edge of I wouldn't say a war, but a lot of war games. Third, the third issue is the world food and energy crisis. It was predictable, it was predicted, but not with the severity it's taken. And I am afraid that we are only at the beginning, that the food crisis will make things worse in many parts of the world where you are deployed. I'm coming from Somalia, and certainly the Corn of Africa is a good example of how the climate change plus the war, both things together, are creating a humanitarian crisis of dantesque proportions that here in Europe we are not aware at all. This is a perfect storm. First, prices increasing. Second, the reaction of the central banks, raising interest rates in the US. Everybody has to follow, because otherwise the currency will be devaluated. Everybody's running to increase interest rates. This will bring us to a world recession. The world following the Fed, the world implementing the same monetary policy, because there is no other way, otherwise the capital will flow. Remember me what's happening in Europe before the euro, when everybody had to follow the monetary policy dictated by Germany. Because if you didn't do the same thing, the capitals were flowing and you had to do it, even if it was not the right policy for your internal reasons. Well, what's happening among us before euro is happening today at the world stage. Then the security situation. Don't limit it to Ukraine. We have a lot of security problems in our neighborhood, and I want to address our colleagues who are in the Sahel. It was not a surprise neither. It was not a surprise neither what's happening in the Sahel. But certainly the degree to which Russia is becoming a major factor in African theaters, yes, it is a surprise. We should, but we haven't imagined how quickly from Central African Republic now to Mali, and I don't know what's happening in Burkina Faso. So look not only to the Ukrainian crisis. Well, this is what is happening. Let's have a look now at the mega trends that will shape our world. Ukraine, but not only Ukraine. I want to insist in this. Last year, everybody was talking about Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the big issue. Remember, in August, in September, Afghanistan. Where is Afghanistan now? In Afghanistan, certainly. But it is no longer on the front pages of the newspapers. It looked like Afghanistan doesn't exist. The same problems exist. They are the same ones. But nobody talks about it. So take care with the issues that appears, a crisis, and then the following crisis arises the previous one. It looks like being solved. No, it's not solved. It's still there. There are many crises around the world. Which are the trends that move this world? First, a messy multipolarity. A messy multipolarity. There is the US-China competition. This is the most important structuring force. The world is being structured around this competition, like it or not. The two big powers, big, very big, are competing, and this competition will restructure the world. And this will coexist with a broader democracies versus authoritarians, a big divide. I wouldn't insist a lot on it, because in our side, there are a lot of authoritarian regimes. We cannot say we are the democracies, and the ones who follow us are also democracy. That's not true. That's not true. Yes, there is a fight between the democratic systems and the authoritarian systems, but authoritarianism is unhappily developing a lot. It's not just China, it's not just Russia. There is an authoritarian trend. Sometimes it's still wearing the democracy suit, but it's no longer democracies. And there are some ones who are not democracies at all. They don't even take the pity of look like democracies. So this competition is the structuring forces. The fight between democracies and authoritarian, it's there, but it's much more than that. The world is not purely bipolar. We have multiple players and poles, and each one looking for their interests and values. Look at Turkey, India, Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia. They are middle powers. They are swing states. They vote on one side or the other according with their interest, not only their theoretical values. But these people, I mentioned them again, Turkey, India, Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia, are players on poles. And this creates this messy multipolarity. These people, and there are a lot of people inside, these are there and not always following us. Look, the Mexico president speech last day. Huh? Who is our Mexico delegate? Is here? Where is he? Now you heard what the Mexico president said yesterday about us, no? Well, the second characteristic is a competitive world where everything is being weaponized. Everything is an arm. Energy, investments, information, migration flows, data. There is a global fight about access to some strategic domains, cyber, maritime, outer space. The third characteristic of this world is the rising nationalism, revisionism, plus identity politics. Putin doesn't want to restore communism. He knows that nobody wants communism again. Putin is using a resource which is an everyday resource, very powerful, and they never disappear. And this is radical nationalism and imperialism. And in the middle of that, we have the global south. And these people don't want to be forced to take side in this geopolitical competition. More, they feel that the global system doesn't deliver and they are not receiving their part. They are not receiving enough recognition, and they don't have the role they should have according with their population and their economic weight. And when facing this multiple crisis, this multipolar crisis, financial crisis, food, energy, it was clear that they are not there following us because they blame us, rightly or not. Let's see what's happening at Sharm el-Sheikh. But look, Congo. Who is our delegate in Congo? Okay, so you were there, no? You listened what happened in the last meeting, and the Congo said that they are not going to sacrifice their economic development to the climate fight. Huh? Sorry? Well, the big Congo. The big Congo. So, we see that the war between the states is coming back, like in the films, like in the Second World War, tanks, infantry, no? The films of war. But apart from that, there is the hybrid wars, the disinformation war that continues. And I want to stress the importance of the war on information and disinformation. I will talk about it later. So this is what? This is what is coming. And this is what we have to face. Let me go back to how. I think that we have to think more political. I think that we need to be more proactive, more reactive. We have to make a link between all these problems. We still operate in silos. I can tell you. I am supposed to be the one who bridges the Commission and the Council. And inside the Commission, my colleagues of different policies. But we continue working in silos. And each policy continues having its own logic and its own rhythm, be it climate, be it trade, be it whatever. Commission, college, the communitarization of policies through the Commission, the nationalization of policies through the Council, it continues being a difficult task. And certainly, the national policies and the community policies, we want to bridge them with this European theme and with this global gateway, but we have still a lot to do in order to be one power, someone that acts on behalf of the Union as a whole. We think too much internal, and then we try to export our model, but we don't think enough about how the others will perceive this exportation of models. Yes, we have the Brussels effect, and we continue setting standards, but I believe that more and more the rest of the world is not ready to follow our exportation of model. This is our model. It is the best one, so you have to follow it. For cultural and historical and economic reasons, this is no longer accepted. So we have to listen more. We have to be much more on listening mode to the other side. The other side is the rest of the world. We need to have more empathy. We tend to overestimate the rational arguments. We are the land of the reason, the reasons. We think that we know better what is in the other people's interest. We underestimate the role of emotions and the persisting appeal of identity politics. Remember this sentence? Is the identity stupid? No, it's no longer the economy, it's the identity. And more some identities are rising and willing to be recognized and accepted and not to be fusion inside the West approach. I think that we have to go faster and to take risks. I need you to report fast, in real time, on what is happening in your countries. I want to be informed by you, not by the press. Sometimes I knew more what's happening somewhere reading the newspapers than reading your reports. The reports come sometimes too late. Sometimes I read something happening somewhere, and I'm asking what our delegation says. Well, by the time being, nothing. By the time being, nothing is not affordable. You have to be on 24 hours reaction capacity. Immediate. Something happens, you inform. I don't want to continue reading in the newspapers things that happen somewhere without our delegation having said nothing. I don't want to blame and shame. But this is something that I have to tell you. I want you to be more reactive. In front of the gun 24 hours a day. We are living in a crisis. You have to be in crisis mode. Explain what's happening quickly, immediately. Even if you don't have the full information on the first hours, show that you are there. I should be the best informed guy in the world. Having all of you around the world, I should be the best informed people in the world, at least as much as any foreign affairs minister. I am the foreign affairs minister of Europe. Behave as you would behave if you were an embassy. Send a telegram, a cable, a mail, quickly. Quickly, please, react. Take more initiative. Be ready to be bold. Whenever we do, there are taboo-breaking decisions. We break taboos on the Ukrainian war, using the European Peace Facility to buy arms, something that at the beginning, oh, that's impossible, we have never done it. We have never done it is not a recipe. Maybe you have to start doing things that we have never done in the past. When we hesitate, we regret it. So I think that, for example, the discussion on the Ukrainian training mission, we had been discussing about the Ukrainian training mission before the war, for months. For months before the war. Do we have to send a training mission to Ukraine? Oh, come on, Ukraine. Oh, training mission, military Ukraine. Boom, then the war comes. And people said, oh, we should have done it. Yeah, we should have done it. And now we are doing it quickly. Well, quickly for the standards, for the European standards. No, quickly for the European standards means a couple of months. But happily the war will start there. Our training mission will have had the possibility of acting. We have to define better our goals and prepare for that. You know, here we work a lot on 7 years scenarios, then a 1 year plan, and announcing big figures that people sometimes doesn't believe anymore. When we announce big figures, take into consideration which is the time scope of this figure. It doesn't mean anything, one figure, if you don't put a time dimension. We are going to support X money. And do you plan to spend it for how many years? Tomorrow or in the next 7 years? Or when you say, in the past, we have been supporting this country with this amount of money. This amount of money, which is the time dimension. It has been spent in 1 year or in 10 years, because it's completely different. And we have the habit of just mentioning figures, avoiding the time dimension, and it doesn't mean anything. So please, be prepared for better explanation of what we do with a time schedule. And we should look for a balance between what we announce and what we implement. Because sometimes some announcements discredited us if they are not being followed by concrete actions. In general terms, I would say that we need a better balance between crisis management and long-term. We live in crisis management. What's happening today? What's happening yesterday? What's happening tomorrow? Crisis, crisis, crisis. Foreign policy is not just managing crises one after the other. We have to try to think in the medium long term. Well, with the pandemics, with the climate, with the energy crisis, we have to think a little bit about what's longer than what's going to happen tomorrow, what's happening yesterday. We have to be a little bit out of the crisis mode, and this will require to think more about how technology is reshaping the world and the nexus between energy, climate, and raw materials. The other day, at the Prague Council, President Macron said that very clearly. We cannot substitute one dependency by another. We are happy that we are importing a lot of GNL from the US at a high price, by the way, and substituting Russian gas by American and Norwegian gas, or Azerbaijan gas. Well, Azerbaijan, it's a small quantity. But what could happen tomorrow if the US, with a new president, decided not to be so friendly with Europeans? Why not? You can imagine the situation in which our critical dependency from GNL coming from the US could also be in crisis. Or that tomorrow we don't have the cobalt and we don't have the rare materials that in Congo, in South America, in Afghanistan, is so much critical for us as the oil and gas. And we don't have a clear understanding that we are creating new dependencies on this link between energy, climate, technology. This is something that we have to be very, very clear. And the last word about communication. Communication is our battlefield. We fight in communication. We don't fight with arms in the battlefield, thank God, but we have to fight on communication. I spend a lot of time doing communication, talking the doorstep, the post-meeting step. My blog is not my blog. It's not my intellectual amusement. Huh? It's my consigna. And I am still surprised that in some delegations, it seems that they don't take enough consideration of our communication, and they don't tweet and retweet the messages that we are delivering from the center. You have to be a network that are repeating, transmitting, insisting. This is a battle that we are not winning because we are not fighting enough. We don't understand that it is a fight. Apart from conquering a space, you have to conquer the minds. The Russians and the Chinese are very good on that. They are industrializing. They have farms, systematically repeating, touching everybody in the world, once and again, once and again. We don't have the Russia Today or Sputnik, not even Liberty Radio, no? But I think that all of you have to do much more on communication. And we provide you with materials. And I think that I have the feeling that you don't transmit the message strongly enough. I need my delegations to step up on social media, on TV, on debates, retweet our messages, our External Action Service materials, certainly my blog, which is the everyday consigna, tailor it to the local circumstances, use local languages. The first problem is that we speak English, but a lot of people around the world don't speak English, they don't understand it, we address them in English. Do it in local languages. We still have a reflex of European culture. We speak our languages and we suppose that the rest of the world understands us. Well, many people around the world don't understand, not even Spanish. So I need you to be much more engaged on this battle of narrative. It's not something secondary. It's not just winning the wars by sending tanks and missiles and troops. It is a big battle. Who is going to win the spirits and the souls of the people? When we say that China is our rival, systemic rivals means that our systems are in rivalry. And the Chinese are trying to explain to the world that their system is much better because, well, maybe you are not going to choose your head of government, but you will have food and heat and social services. You will improve your living conditions. And many people in the world, yes, they go and vote and choose their government, but their material conditions are not being improved. And at the end, people want to live a better life. And we have to explain which are the links between political freedom and a better life. And I'm always saying the same thing. We Europeans, we have the extraordinary chance. We live in the world, in this part of the world, where political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion are the best. It's the best combination of all of that. But the rest of the world is not like this. And our fight is to try to explain that the democracy, freedom, political freedom, is not something that can be exchanged by economic prosperity or social cohesion, that both things have to go together. Otherwise, our model will perish, will not be able to survive in this world. We are too much Kantians and not enough Hobbesians, no? As the philosopher says. Well, let's try to understand the world the way it is and bring the voice of Europe and bring to me, to my services, to the External Action headquarters, what do you feel, what do you understand, what you see. Inform us. You are my eyes, my ears around the world. I count on you, but the task is not easy, and certainly we can do it much better. Thank you.